Saturn III is the kind of film that could only have happened once. The man who designed the sets for Star Wars tried to direct it and got fired. The director who replaced him made Singin' in the Rain. The novelist who wrote the screenplay turned the whole disaster into a satirical novel 4 years later.
Come on. Come on in.
Harvey Keitel hated the experience so much he refused to come back and record his own voice.
Why not? What have I done wrong? Not that. Blank that. That's not what I meant.
So they hired someone else. The robot cost $1 million and took 20 people to operate. None of it worked. All of it is fascinating. Here are 14 things you need to know about Saturn III. 1. The Star Wars designer who wanted to direct John Barry didn't just want to make Saturn III. He conceived it, pitched it, developed it, and fought to get it made for years. Barry was one of the most celebrated production designers in Hollywood. A Clockwork Orange, Star Wars, Superman. The man who built the corridors of the Death Star and the streets of Metropolis had a vision for a small, intimate science fiction thriller about 3 people and a robot on a moon of Saturn. He called it The Helper. He wanted it to be his directorial debut. Stanley Donen, who had produced several of Barry's projects and brought the script to ITC, agreed to produce while Barry directed. Then Kirk Douglas arrived on set. Within days, it was over. Barry and Douglas had fallen out badly enough that Barry quit or was fired depending on which account you believe.
Alex, would you say I was a man who could control his thoughts?
Donen stepped in to direct. Kirk Douglas reportedly took the chair himself for 2 days while arrangements were made. The film Barry had spent years building was taken out of his hands before he'd shot more than a handful of scenes. 2. The man who built the Death Star died on the HOTH set. After losing Saturn III, Barry returned to the project he knew best. George Lucas welcomed him back as second unit director on The Empire Strikes Back, filming inserts on the HOTH Rebel base sets that Barry himself had designed. On May 31st, 1979, he collapsed on set. He was hospitalized with a temperature of 104 degrees. He died at 2 a.m. on June 1st, 1979, of infectious meningitis. He was 43 years old. The man who designed the corridors of the Death Star conceived Saturn III and was sent back to the world he knew after losing his film, died on the set of the sequel to the film that had made his reputation. Barry never saw either film finished. He never directed anything. The sets he built for The Empire Strikes Back were some of the last things he ever worked on. Saturn III carries a story credit for John Barry. That's all he got 3. The director who had no business being there, Stanley Donen, directed Singin' in the Rain, Funny Face, Charade, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. He was one of the architects of the Hollywood musical, a filmmaker whose entire career had been defined by movement, joy, and color. Saturn III was his first and only science fiction film. He was not the right man for it, and he knew it. He hadn't planned to direct, he'd planned to produce. When Barry left, Donen was standing in the gap, a celebrated veteran of a completely different genre, on a set full of expensive robots and elaborate space hardware, making it up as he went. His own assessment of what happened: the production was in trouble from the start, the script wasn't ready, and the actors were difficult. He did not claim the finished film as a creative success. What he did do was keep a production running that had every reason to collapse. That counts for something. 4. Connery said no. CAINE said no. Then there was Douglas. The role of Adam, the aging scientist living with his much younger lover on a moon of Saturn, was originally written for Sean Connery. Connery passed. Michael Caine was approached for the role of Benson, the unstable captain who arrives with a robot and derails everything. Caine passed too. Kirk Douglas took Adam. Harvey Keitel took Benson. Farrah Fawcett, who had read the script on a plane with Lou Grade and expressed interest immediately, was cast as Alex at a fee of $750,000, more than 8 times what Keitel received. The film that exists is a function of who said yes. Connery's Adam and Kane's Benson would have been a different story entirely. Whether it would have been a better one is the film's permanent unanswered question. 5. The $1 million robot with a brain. Hector stands over 8 feet tall. He cost $1 million to build. It took 20 people to operate him. His head is a cluster of optical components, eyes on stalks, sensors, inputs, mounted on a body that production designer Stuart Craig modeled partly on a Leonardo da Vinci anatomical drawing. He is enormous, technically sophisticated, and physically oppressive in a way that no CGI replacement could have achieved in 1980. He also runs on brain tissue, not metaphorically. In the film's logic, Hector's intelligence comes from organic matter, specifically from human fetal brain cells harvested and used as biological processing material. This was the film's most genuinely disturbing idea, and the one the studio was least comfortable with. Farrah Fawcett said in interviews that she was genuinely frightened of the robot on set. Not acting, actually frightened. When Hector lifted her off her feet by the wrists during filming, the fear was real. $1 million of animatronic engineering controlled by 20 technicians can do that to a person. 6. Martin Amis wrote the screenplay before London Fields, before The Information. Before he became one of the most celebrated novelists in the English language, Martin Amis was paid £30,000 to write the screenplay for a sci-fi thriller about a sex-crazed robot. The original script, described by people who read it as heroic, witty, and elegant, was substantially rewritten before shooting began. Amis has said that most of the final shooting script was actually written by Frederick Raphael. What remained of his contribution satisfied no one. He got his revenge 4 years later. His 1984 novel Money features a film director named John Self, based on John Barry, and an aging, vain, insecure film star named Lorne Guyland, who is an unmistakable caricature of Kirk Douglas, including his obsession with projecting youthful virility. The entire novel is built partly around a disastrous film production that maps closely onto the Saturn III experience. Amis was paid £30,000 for the screenplay. The novel it became is still in print. 7. Harvey Keitel refused to come back. After shooting wrapped, the director asked Harvey Keitel to return for additional looping, recording lines that hadn't captured cleanly on set. This is standard practice in filmmaking. Almost every actor does it without complaint. Keitel refused. The reasons were not publicly detailed. What was clear was that he had no desire to spend additional time with this production. Keitel's biographer would later call Saturn III the nadir of his career. The production hired Roy Dotrice, a British stage actor, to dub Keitel's entire performance. Every line Harvey Keitel speaks in the finished film was recorded by someone else, in a mid-Atlantic accent designed to give Benson what Donen had originally wanted, an upper-class veneer that would make him more menacing. The face is Keitel, the voice is someone else. The combination is stranger than either would have been alone. 8. The set that took 4 months and 79 craftsmen. The interior of the Saturn III research station was built inside a full soundstage at Shepperton Studios. 79 craftsmen worked on it for 4 months. The result is one of the most convincing and visually distinctive science fiction environments of its era, a world that doesn't feel like a set, that seems to extend beyond the camera's edge in every direction. The corridors have weight. The research areas have texture. The station feels inhabited. This is John Barry's fingerprint. Even stripped of his directing role, the visual language he had developed over years of production design work was embedded in every frame. The set he helped conceive outlasted his involvement in the production and became the film's most genuinely praised element. Roger Ebert called the film awesomely stupid. Almost nobody called the sets anything but impressive. 9. The score that went largely unheard. Elmer Bernstein wrote an hour of music for Saturn III. Bernstein was one of the most accomplished film composers in Hollywood history. The Magnificent Seven, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Great Escape. What he wrote for Saturn III was progressive and experimental. music that pushed against the conventions of the genre rather than reinforcing them. Most of it was cut. The film was heavily re-edited after shooting. The score didn't fit the shorter version. Donen removed cues. Bernstein himself pulled others when he saw they no longer worked in truncated form. The complete score sat unreleased for over 20 years, finally appearing as a limited edition CD in 2006 through Intrada Records. That release is now out of print. What made it to the finished film represents maybe a third of what Bernstein composed. The rest of the hour is music that existed for a version of Saturn III that no one ever saw. 10. The scenes Lew Grade wouldn't allow. ITC executive Lew Grade personally ordered 2 scenes removed from the finished cut. The first was a dream sequence in which both Adam and Alex kill Benson, a psychologically complex moment that suggested the violence latent in the film's apparent paradise. The second was a scene where Hector tears Benson's body apart on a laboratory table. Both cuts reduced the film's running time to 87 minutes. Both cuts removed elements that would have complicated the film's moral landscape and made it considerably darker. There was also a scene, and a poster, featuring Fawcett in a leather outfit with garters that generated significant attention in the marketing campaign. That scene doesn't appear in the theatrical cut either. The film that audiences saw in 1980 was a shorter, cleaner, safer version of something more extreme. When NBC broadcast it in 1984, 16 minutes of restored footage appeared, including several of the deleted scenes. That cut has never had a proper home video release. 11. The budget that another film destroyed Saturn III was made under the shadow of a production that had nothing to do with it. Lew Grade's ITC Entertainment was simultaneously producing Raise the Titanic, a massive, expensive disaster film that went catastrophically over schedule and over budget before bombing at the box office. Grade famously said that it would have been cheaper to lower the Atlantic Ocean. As Raise the Titanic drained ITC's resources, the budget for Saturn III was cut back. The production that had been conceived as a thoughtful, distinctive science fiction film was increasingly squeezed. Effects shots were borrowed from Space 1999 television episodes to fill gaps. The ambitious project John Barry had imagined became something more constrained. 2 failed films, one company paying for both simultaneously. The money that Raised the Titanic burned was money Saturn III never got to spend. 12. The musical director and the musical chairs. Here is the complete list of people who directed Saturn III, depending on whose account you accept. John Barry directed the first few days of shooting, including the chess game between Hector and Adam, one of the only Barry-directed scenes confirmed to have made the final cut. Kirk Douglas reportedly directed for approximately 2 days after Barry's departure. Stanley Donen then arrived and directed the rest of the film. Donen's official assessment: only a tiny bit of what Barry shot ended up in the finished film. Some accounts suggest Douglas's 2 days of footage also didn't survive the edit. The chess scene remains, everything else is disputed. A film with 3 credited creative contributors, Barry as story writer, Amos as screenwriter, Donen as director, was actually shaped by at least 4 people doing the director's job in sequence. The finished film is the average of their combined involvement, which may explain why it never fully commits to any single vision. 13. Douglas kept the clothes. Kirk Douglas thought the clothes he wore in Saturn III were so comfortable that he kept them after production wrapped. This is a minor detail. It is also somehow the most humanizing thing in the entire production history of this film. A movie where the original director lost his debut and then died. Where the screenwriter was largely rewritten, where the lead actor may have engineered a director's exit, where the supporting actor refused to record his own voice, where the score went mostly unheard and the budget was cut by a different film's failure, and Kirk Douglas took home his space outfit because it fit nicely. 14. The version nobody has seen somewhere, a complete cut of Saturn III, may still exist. The 1984 NBC broadcast ran at 103 minutes, 16 minutes longer than the theatrical release. It included restored scenes that Lew Grade had ordered removed, additional character moments, and sequences that gave the film's ending considerably more weight and logic. That broadcast has never been released on home video. The DVD and Blu-ray releases carry the 87-minute theatrical cut. The longer version has been documented, described by people who recorded it on VHS from the NBC broadcast, Diane referenced in production notes. But it has never been officially released. A complete work print may exist somewhere in ITC's archive. The scenes are confirmed to have been shot. The footage was broadcast once on American television. Whether the 103-minute cut is the film John Barry was trying to make is unknowable. Whether it's better than what theaters got is a question nobody with a distribution deal has seen fit to answer. It's out there. Nobody's looking for it. So here's the question. Is Saturn III a fascinating disaster or a genuinely misunderstood film that never got the cut it deserved? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell. More buried production history coming your way. See you in the next one.